On a frigid January morning in 2026, as snow dusted the silent streets of Brussels, the city was jolted awake by headlines that would soon echo across the continent and beyond. The news was as unexpected as it was seismic. Serbia and Belarus had both formally applied to join BRICS, the powerful economic bloc led by Russia, China, India, Brazil, and South Africa. In the corridors of the European Union, initial disbelief quickly gave way to a sense of alarm. Phones buzzed with urgent messages, and officials huddled in whispered conversations as confirmations arrived from both Belgrade and Minsk. This wasn't just another diplomatic shuffle or routine alliance, it was a direct challenge to the very foundations of Europe's post-Cold War order, a system that had long seemed unshakable. For decades, the narrative had been one of eastward expansion, of former Eastern Bloc countries moving closer to the West, joining the EU and NATO. Now, for the first time in a generation, two European nations were pivoting east, toward an alliance led by Russia and China, signaling a dramatic reversal. The timing of the announcement was no accident. It came just days before a major BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro, ensuring maximum global attention and putting pressure on Western leaders to respond. In NATO headquarters, analysts scrambled to assess the implications. Military advisors pored over maps, considering how this shift might affect the alliance's eastern flank and the delicate balance of power in the region. Serbia, a country geographically surrounded by NATO members, was now openly seeking alignment with Russia, a move that could complicate regional security and diplomatic relations for years to come. Meanwhile, Belarus, already closely tied to Moscow, was cementing its break from the West, making its intentions unmistakably clear to the world. Across Western capitals, emergency meetings erupted. Diplomats rushed into council buildings, their faces etched with concern, as governments scrambled to formulate a response to this unprecedented development. Questions swirled in every policy circle. What did this mean for the future of EU enlargement? For the security of NATO's eastern border? Was the era of Western dominance in Europe coming to an end? The move sent a clear message. Western influence, once considered absolute even within Europe's borders, was now being openly contested. The shockwaves were immediate. Across the continent, citizens watched in disbelief as dramatic headlines flashed across screens, and the unity of Europe, so long taken for granted, was suddenly in question. Serbia and Belarus weren't just making a diplomatic statement, they were redrawing the map of Europe, both literally and figuratively, and signaling a new era of geopolitical competition. For Western leaders, the realization was chilling. The old order was fracturing, and the rules of the game were being rewritten before their eyes. The world watched as Europe's geopolitical landscape shifted beneath its feet, with journalists from every corner of the globe descending on Brussels to cover the unfolding crisis. The aftershocks of this historic announcement had only just begun, and no one could predict how far they would reach, or what kind of Europe would emerge from the turmoil. Serbia and Belarus's recent bids to join BRICS mark a dramatic reversal of Europe's post-1989 trajectory. For decades, the continent seemed to be moving steadily toward greater integration with the West, embracing liberal democracy, open markets, and the promise of EU membership. But now, these two nations are signaling a profound shift, challenging the very direction Europe has taken since the fall of the Berlin Wall. For years, the West's pull seemed irresistible, drawing in countries with the allure of prosperity and stability. Yet beneath the surface, cracks had long been forming, discontent simmered, and not everyone felt included in the European dream. EU membership was never a smooth path. Many nations faced endless negotiations, shifting requirements, and slow, sometimes frustrating rewards. The process left some feeling sidelined, their aspirations delayed or denied. For some, especially those with deep historical, cultural, or economic ties to Russia, the Western model gradually lost its appeal. The promise of the West faded, replaced by a sense of alienation and a search for alternatives. Now Serbia and Belarus are openly rejecting the idea that their future must be tied to the West. Instead, they are charting a new course, seeking partners who respect their sovereignty and offer a different vision of cooperation. They're turning to a rising bloc, BRICS, that promises not just economic opportunity, but also the chance to assert their independence on the world stage. For these countries, BRICS represents a new kind of alliance, one that values national identity and mutual respect. Is this the dawn of a new Iron Curtain? This time, the divide isn't marked by barbed wire and watchtowers, but by shifting alliances, economic competition, and rival visions for Europe's future. Europe's dream of unity is under strain, as old divisions resurface and new rivalries take shape. The continent now faces an era of renewed competition, where influence and allegiance are once again up for grabs. The front line of this new geopolitical contest runs through the Balkans and Eastern Europe, a region once again at the heart of Europe's unfolding story. To grasp the stakes, you need to understand BRICS. Once just an investment term, BRICS became a political force. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa. With recent expansions, including Saudi Arabia and Egypt, BRICS now represents a huge share of global population, GDP, and energy. Its core mission challenge Western dominance and promote a multipolar world. BRICS members want more say for the global South and have built their own institutions, like the New Development Bank. Unlike the IMF or World Bank, BRICS offers loans without Western political strings. For countries frustrated with the status quo, BRICS is an attractive alternative. Membership means access to resources and a seat at a new global table. BRICS is part of a bigger story, the rise of the rest and the waning dominance of the West. Economic power has shifted east and south, with China and India leading the way. The 2024 BRICS expansion brought in oil giants and regional rivals, making the bloc a diplomatic heavyweight. Many developing nations see the current system as unfair and dominated by a select few. BRICS offers an alternative, mutual respect, sovereignty, and non-interference. Its appeal is both economic and ideological, development without Western conditions and a louder voice in global affairs. Serbia and Belarus's applications show BRICS's pull now reaches into Europe itself. The global balance of power is shifting, and BRICS is at the center. Serbia's BRICS bid is rooted in frustration with the West. After decades as an EU candidate, reforms and dialogue have led nowhere, especially over Kosovo. The EU's demands, seen as humiliating, have bred resentment. Russia and China, key BRICS members, back Serbia's stance on Kosovo, blocking its international recognition. Aligning with BRICS formalizes this support and offers Serbia a new diplomatic shield. Economically, China invests heavily in Serbia, while Russia supplies energy. BRICS membership promises deeper ties and less reliance on an unreliable West. For Serbia, the East now offers more than the fading promise of EU accession. It's a strategic pivot, born of necessity and national pride. For Belarus, joining BRICS is about survival. Isolated by Western sanctions after its 2020 election and support for Russia's war in Ukraine, Belarus's economy is on the brink. BRICS offers access to new markets, investment, and a financial lifeline, without Western demands for reform. Politically, it grants legitimacy outside the West and strengthens ties with powerful allies. For Lukashenko's regime, it's a way to project strength and stability. The move cements Belarus's place in Russia's orbit and signals a permanent shift east. For Minsk, BRICS is the only viable path to economic and political survival. For Serbia and Belarus, BRICS membership is a high-stakes gamble. The rewards, access to vast markets, investment, and a louder global voice. For Serbia, it means support on Kosovo. For Belarus, legitimacy and a buffer against isolation. But the risks are real. Serbia's EU hopes will likely end, and both could face deeper Western sanctions. Serbia risks isolation in a region surrounded by EU and NATO. Belarus could become even more dependent on Russia, losing what little autonomy remains. Both are betting BRICS will be the winning side in a new global rivalry. If not, they risk being left isolated, locked out of the West, and tied to uncertain partners. Applying to BRICS is just the start. Admission requires consensus from all members. Russia and China will back Serbia and Belarus, but others like India may hesitate. India values its Western ties and may worry about BRICS becoming too anti-Western. Brazil and South Africa may question the value of adding two small European economies. Serbia and Belarus must prove they can contribute to BRICS's global ambitions, not just solve their own problems. Admitting European nations would shatter the idea that BRICS is only for the global South. The decision will weigh symbolism against the risk of antagonizing the West. The outcome will shape the future of the bloc and Europe's place in it. Serbia and Belarus's BRICS bids force Europe to face a new reality, one where the continent is no longer united under a single vision, but instead is becoming a battleground for influence between East and West. The decisions made in Belgrade and Minsk are sending shockwaves through European capitals, challenging the very foundations of the post-Cold War order. The European Union's long-standing promise of membership, once a powerful incentive, has lost much of its allure. Serbia's pivot toward BRICS exposes the limits of Western leverage and reveals growing frustration with stalled negotiations and unfulfilled promises. On the streets of Belgrade, citizens debate their country's future, torn between old alliances and new opportunities. Now, Brussels faces a critical choice. Should it accelerate the enlargement process to keep countries like Serbia close, or draw a hard line against those who flirt with rival powers? The debate is fierce, with some leaders urging engagement, while others warn of the risks of expanding too quickly. For NATO, Serbia's move creates a new vulnerability in the already fragile Balkans, raising concerns about security and stability. Meanwhile, Belarus's shift toward BRICS cements a hostile bloc on the EU's eastern border, complicating defense strategies and heightening tensions across the region. The illusion of a unified post-Cold War Europe is fading fast. The optimism that once followed the fall of the Berlin Wall has given way to uncertainty and division, as old rivalries resurface and new alliances form. Great power competition has returned to the continent, forcing the EU to actively compete for the allegiance of its neighbors. No longer can Brussels rely on soft power alone. It must now offer tangible benefits and reassurances to those caught in the middle. The West can no longer assume its model is the only path forward. Across Eastern Europe, alternative visions are gaining traction, and political rallies reflect a growing appetite for change and independence from traditional Western influence. Serbia and Belarus's applications to BRICS are a wake-up call, a stark reminder that history is not over, and that the struggle for influence and identity in Europe is far from settled. The battle for Europe's future is just beginning. Young people across the continent are taking to the streets and to the ballot box, determined to shape the direction of their countries in this new era of uncertainty. The map of Europe is being redrawn, again. As borders shift and alliances change, the continent stands at a crossroads, its future more uncertain and more contested than ever before.